filmed like an awkwardly long amount of time of me trying to figure out how to do my hair in the little webcam window. And I was having a really hard time figuring out my left from my right. So I gave up and just did it in the mirror instead. But now it looks like my previous recording didn't actually save. So I might have just lost that whole thing. So just in case I did, I'm just going to reiterate really fast that I was going to do a video on gardening in the winter and whether or not you could use old fish tanks as like mini greenhouses. But it snowed over the weekend and it's been really cold. This entire month has been unseasonably warm for us. But then of course when I was going to do a video on outside stuff, it got really cold and freezing, and so I decided to nix that video idea and instead talk about my goat giving birth over the weekend and something interesting that I learned from a friend of my mother's who is a biology teacher, and she is also a generational farmer, and she owns goats and a couple other farm animals. And she told me something that I've never heard before, and I've never read in any goat books, and I have read a lot of goat books. I am a first-time goat owner, and my goat gave birth this past weekend, and she was a first freshener. So this was both of our first time with goat babies. So something my mom's friends said was that a change in barometric pressure will induce labor. And that doesn't just apply to goats. She said it applies to many farm animals. And so when my goat Lily was late, she had gone past her due date and still wasn't showing any signs of delivery anytime soon. I started to get a little bit worried, but I figured I was a first-timer, so maybe it wasn't a big deal. And so I spoke with my friend's mom, because she's obviously very knowledgeable, and she said, you know, it's been unseasonably warm, we've had the same consistent weather, but I guarantee the second that the weather changes, the second there's a storm, she'll go into labor. I figured out that the next time it was going to storm would be this past Friday. Now, Friday comes around, I wake up in the morning to go feed and water and check on all of the animals, and Lily is pacing. She's standing up and sitting down, and so I'm like, oh wow, she's probably gonna have her babies today. So, and then I remembered what my mom's friend said about the second it storms, she is going to go into labor. And it stormed on Friday. So I just thought that was crazy. Like, that's something that you would think people would talk more about, but I guess they don't. But it was totally true, and it totally worked. I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience as like the first time goat owner, the first time having kids. I've seen a lot of homesteading YouTubers that make it kind of seem like if you're not there to watch your goat give birth, you are somehow a horrible goat owner. Like, you've got to be sitting out there next to them, waiting for them to give birth. And yes, while there are complications that can arise, and it's good to be there for, so I was all raring and prepped to, like, run outside the second I saw that she was in labor. I had been in the kitchen most of the day, so that I could look out the back window at her and keep an eye on her. At around 1 o'clock, I had to go to work. Obviously right now, I work from home. I just work on the computer. But the computer was downstairs. So I went downstairs and I worked for an hour. I came upstairs, I looked out the window, and there were 3 baby goats with Lily. So I had been watching her like a hawk all day. And of course, the second that I turn around and I'm not paying attention is when she had her babies. And so I felt kind of guilty. But you know what? She popped them out perfectly fine. She was perfectly fine. The kids seemed perfectly fine. I wasn't needed. Now, I have read a lot of books that have said, you know, don't intervene unless you absolutely have to. And I think that's something that gets lost on a lot of people. I think a lot of people have this attitude that, like, you have to be a... Andrew, what are those people called that, like, help assist with birth at home? Midwife. That's it. That's right. So, yeah, a lot, especially YouTubers, I don't know what it is about, like, YouTubers, a lot of homestead YouTubers kind of seem to have this attitude that you need to be a midwife for your goats. And if you're not there, then it's just not going to work, and she's just not going to have her babies, and everyone's going to die, and it's going to be awful. And while that might happen, everyone says that's like a 1% chance of that actually happening. And 99% of the time, the goat is going to be able to have babies without any external assistance. So I definitely learned that because I had been so vigilant all day, and the second I turned my back, she popped them out with no problem. Ooh, that is very... That's showing up very pink on camera. While it is good to be attentive, chances are your goat's not gonna die if you're not there to be a midwife. And I think a lot of homestead YouTubers have that attitude. So I'd say just be a little beware of that attitude, because you don't want to step in, as a lot of people say, unless absolutely necessary. Because you can ultimately do more harm than good if you try to interfere with the birth. And there's not really anything wrong. Those are my 2 things that I think people don't really talk about goat birth, is weather can affect if your goat has its baby on time, or if it's late, or... Because I was freaking out because I thought the baby was late, but it wasn't. It came as soon as there was a storm. Well, I should say them. There were 3 babies. It was a first freshener who had 3 babies, and it was crazy. Here are cute little baby goats. And then, I'll put that in there. And we've got 2 more in there. 3 goats. Got 3 babies. And it's a little bit chilly, so we put them all in coats.
Baby coats and baby coats.
Baby goats and baby coats. It was definitely a learning experience for me. I feel like I did learn a lot, and I have to say, goat kids are like the cutest things in the world. They are so adorable, and they are smaller than what you expect them to be. I've seen so many videos and pictures of newborn Nigerian dwarves, and I always just kind of picture them to be like the same size as my dogs. I have a purebred Jack Russell Terrier. So for some reason in my mind, whenever I saw pictures and videos of baby goats, I always imagined them like Nigerian dwarfs. For some reason, I thought baby Nigerian dwarves were like this. And she's still considered a small dog, but she's a decent size. And then these baby goats were born, and they're like the size of her head. Like, these things were tiny. And, like, I could not believe how small and fragile they seemed. There's my other dog, Cricket. And while they still were able to stand up and walk around and everything like that, they still just seemed way more small and fragile. And which was then really funny, because then like my dad came over to see them and he looked at them and he went, huh, those look like they're already like 3 months old. And I was like, are you kidding me? They're so small. Why would you think that? But so I just thought that was funny. That was just kind of a little side note. Different. It was a lot different than I imagined it would be. And of course, Stinkin' Lily, I set up this beautiful, it was actually a dog house at one point, but it's this beautiful insulated dog house that someone built by hand. So it kind of looks like a little wooden house. And I set it up and I filled it up with bedding, and it was lovely, and it was a perfect place for her to give birth, and she went and gave birth in the mud. And at this point I'm just babbling, and my makeup is done and my hair is done, and it is time for my husband and I to go out on a date. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video now before I just get lost on another tangent. But thank you all for being here, and I hope you at least learned a little bit from my babblings. See you all later.